Welcome to Christmas in Hollow Hills. We will journey deep into the legends of this awkward little town. Today's episode, The Christmas Bell. This podcast is presented by VCDI and TCDI. The sound of Hollow Hills during winter was like nowhere else. The wind whistled through the bare trees, snow crunched underfoot, and from time to time, the distant echo of a church bell could be heard, even when there was no service scheduled. The locals knew these sounds, and though some might call it eerie, it was just part of the town's charm. For Sam Porter, though, Hollow Hills was a mystery he wasn't sure he'd ever understand. His family had moved there just a few weeks before Christmas, after his dad took a new job at the hardware store. At 10 years old, Sam wasn't happy about the move. He missed his friends and their holiday traditions. Now he was stuck in a small, quiet town where the only entertainment seemed to be the stories people told about ghosts and strange happenings. But there was one thing about Hollow Hills that intrigued Sam: the old church bell. It was said to be over 100 years old, and though it had long been silenced for daily use, people swore they could still hear it ringing on certain nights. The story started one cold December morning. Sam was exploring the outskirts of the town's cemetery. He wasn't supposed to be there, of course. His mom had warned him to stay away, saying it was no place for a kid to be wandering alone. But Sam was curious. The graves were ancient, the names barely visible under the layers of moss and frost. And there was something about the quiet that felt like an adventure waiting to happen. That's when he saw it. Peeking out from a pile of snow near an old, crumbling headstone was a small bell. It wasn't shiny or new. It looked ancient, its brass surface tarnished and scratched. Sam knelt down and picked it up, the cold metal tingling his fingers. There was something about it that seemed special. Without thinking, Sam gave it a little shake. The sound was faint, barely more than a whisper, but as soon as the bell rang, Sam felt a strange chill run down his spine. He looked around, suddenly aware of how still everything had become. The wind had stopped, and the usual rustling of the trees was gone. The world was silent, except for the soft ring of the bell still echoing in his ears. Sam stuffed the bell into his pocket and hurried back to town, not sure why, but feeling like something had just changed. That night, Sam lay awake in his bed, the bell hidden under his pillow. He wasn't sure why he kept it, or why he felt the need to have it close. As the clock struck midnight, Sam heard a sound that made his heart race. It was faint, but unmistakable. The bell had rung again, even though he hadn't touched it. Sam sat up, listening, and then he heard it. Something even more unsettling. The faint, ghostly hum of a voice, singing a Christmas carol. But the words weren't clear. It was as if the singer were miles away, lost in a fog. Sam jumped out of bed and went to the window, looking out over the snowy street. Nothing seemed out of place. No one was out there. But then, at the far end of the street, he saw it. A shadowy figure moving slowly towards the old church. The bell in his pocket rang again. The next morning, Sam couldn't shake the feeling that something was trying to get his attention. He took the bell out of his pocket and examined it more closely. It was small and weathered, but there was something inscribed on the side. The words were faded, but Sam could just make out the name, Ezekiel. Curious, Sam made his way to the only place in town where he knew he could find answers: Holly's Diner. Holly was one of the few people in Hollow Hills who seemed to understand its strange history. She's always had a story, ready for anyone who asked, and Sam had heard that if you wanted to know something about the town's past, Holly was the person to see. When Sam walked into the diner, the smell of fresh baked cinnamon rolls and hot chocolate filled the air. Holly, wiping down the counter, smiled when she saw him.
Well, if it isn't Sam Porter, what brings you here today?
Sam hesitated, then pulled out the bell out of his pocket and placed it on the counter. Holly's eyes widened slightly as she picked it up, turning it over in her hands.
Where did you find this?
She asked, her voice soft.
In the cemetery,
Sam replied.
I rang it, and well, I think I heard something last night, and I saw someone.
Holly nodded, a knowing look on her face.
That's Ezekiel's bell. He was the town's blacksmith many, many years ago. But he wasn't just any blacksmith. He was the one who rang the bell for Christmas services at the old church. He was known for it. The sound of his bell ringing out over the town was the signal that Christmas had truly begun. What happened to him?
Sam asked. Holly sighed, her eyes distant as if remembering something long forgotten.
One winter, there was a terrible snowstorm on Christmas Eve. Ezekiel went out to ring the bell, as he always did, but he never made it back. They found his body near the cemetery, frozen in the snow. Ever since then, people say they hear his bell ringing on cold winter nights, as if he's still trying to finish his task.
Sam shivered.
So the bell I found, it's his?
Holly nodded.
It's said that Ezekiel's spirit still roams the town, looking for someone to help him ring the bell one last time.
That night, Sam couldn't stop thinking about what Holly had said. He lay in bed, listening to the wind outside. Midnight came, and with it, the sound of the bell. Sam sat up, his heart racing. The bell rang again, louder this time, and the ghostly singing returned, clearer than before. Gathering his courage, Sam grabbed the bell and threw on his coat. He raced out of the house, and the cold biting at his cheeks as he ran towards the old church. The bell rang in his hand, louder and louder, as if it was leading him. When Sam reached the churchyard, he saw him. The shadowy figure from the night before stood by the old church bell tower, his outline barely visible in the moonlight. It was Ezekiel. Sam swallowed hard, then held up the bell.
Are you trying to ring it?
Sam called out, his voice trembling. The figure didn't move, but Sam felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over him. Suddenly, he walked towards the church bell that hadn't rung in decades. As he reached it, the wind picked up, and for the first time, Sam heard the voice clearly. Ring it. Sam lifted the bell in his hand and rang it with all his might. The sound echoed through the night, strong and clear. And then from the church tower, the old bell rang too. Its deep, resonant tone filled the air, echoing through the town as it had all those years ago. Ezekiel's shadow faded into the night, leaving Sam standing there, the bell still ringing in his hand. The next morning, the people of Hollow Hills awoke to a sound they hadn't heard in years. The church bell ringing out over the snow-covered hills. When Sam returned the bell to Holly's diner, she smiled softly.
I think Ezekiel's finally at peace,
she said. And though Sam wasn't sure what to believe, he couldn't help but smile too. The bell had been rung, and for the first time since he moved to Hollow Hills, Sam felt like he was truly home.